Hey, welcome to another episode of geekoutdoors.com. And as you could probably tell by the title, happy birthday, Linux. Now, there are many discussions over whether or not the official birthday, the 25th anniversary of Linux, is in October or in August. However, it has been 25 years, with the release being in 1991, that Linux was brought to the world. And a lot of people would credit the creation and the popularity of Linux to Linus Torvalds, who created the Linux kernel. However, Linux as an operating system, or Linux in general, would not be possible without Richard Stallman, who created the GNU and also all the components that go into Linux, the libraries, compilers, applications, and so many other things. So it would not be possible without that. And also, I would also put Andrew S. Tenenbaum in there as well, who created Minix, which Linus Torvalds worked on to learn about, this Unix-like operating system. And I can't forget the many thousands of developers around the world who developed and contributed to the Linux community. So in my case, how did Linux affect me, and how was my experience with Linux? Now, if I remember correctly, the very first time I had any exposure to Linux was in the late 90s. At that time, I had a computer magazine, and in it came a CD that had Red Hat Linux, which I could actually install on my machine. Now, you got to remember, at that time, we didn't really have any of these nice graphical user interfaces for Linux. Linux was really only meant for the hardcore nerds, geeks, and the really tech-related people. So these are people who actually wanted to spend the time to try to learn Linux and get it to work. Now, I was not successful in getting Red Hat Linux to work 100% on my computer. It was really, really difficult. However, I got a taste of Linux. But it wasn't until 2005, 2006 when Ubuntu came onto the scene that it was the very first distribution of Linux that was really user-friendly. It was really the first one that you can actually install on a graphical user interface instead of using everything command line, So that was really a big change in Linux. And once I got it to work, I was absolutely amazed. This was the first operating system that I used outside of Windows or Mac that I could actually use. It had pretty much most of what I needed, to run my computer every single day. It had a browser, it had Office applications, it had everything that I would need. Now, it wasn't 100% there for me to move over from Windows, but it kept me from being discouraged, and it was actually usable, which was just an incredible experience for me. And I did use Windows side by side with Ubuntu Linux for, I would say, about a year to 2 years before I completely made the move over to Linux. And I was so excited with Linux. I tried out so many distributions. I installed it on everything. I had it on my laptops, my desktops. I did dual booting with Windows. I partitioned things. I learned a lot about, scripting, command line. I did some programming, so many things. And it's all because Linux gave you so much control and flexibility. And the thing that just blew my mind was this whole amazing operating system was free, and obviously it wasn't really free because a lot of, sweat and work was done with all these people around the world to make Linux what it is today. But I didn't have to pay a license like I did with Windows. I could put it on many computers as I want. And it was just so fun. I got to tinker. I got to take things apart. And, the whole geek inside of me just went crazy over it. And the other benefits were that I didn't have to worry about viruses. I didn't have constant system crashes and the blue screen of death, not unless I was really playing around with stuff, experimenting. And it was just such a solid operating system. It had everything that a nerd and a geek would want. And as Linux, many iterations of Linux came for the desktop, it just got easier, it's got more powerful, and that's why I am still using it today. And obviously my distribution of choice is Linux Mint, and there are so many other versions now. And Linux nowadays, especially the kernel, is on so many things now, not just your Android phones and servers, but it's practically everywhere. And I love that, so that's basically my thoughts on the 25th anniversary of Linux. Thanks Linus Torvalds, Richard Stallman, and the many thousands of people in the Linux community. And I'm going to continue using Linux, and hopefully, I'm pretty sure more and more people are going to come into the world of Linux. And a lot of people are using Linux every day without really knowing it. And so if you are a Linux user, or if you had any thoughts about the 25th anniversary of Linux, leave them in the comments and descriptions below. And don't forget, I am on Snapchat at Geek Outdoors. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for checking out this episode. And as always, if you like these videos, be sure to click on the subscribe button. And for full written content, audio content, and additional geek stuff, head over to geekoutdoors.com. And I'll see you outdoors on the very next episode.